Do ethics matter? It's a question for Parliament's ethics watchdog, who's leaving the post after 5 years. During that time, he's found multiple instances of ministers and MPs breaching ethics rules, even the Prime Minister himself, and more than once. But the steepest fine he can levy for those breaches is about $500. Mario Dion is the outgoing ethics commissioner, and he's here to talk about that. Hi, Mr. Dion. Good to see you, and thank you for making the time.
Good afternoon, actually.
Look, there are a number of recent polls and trust barometers that sort of quantify a feeling that I think many people who watch politics have, which is that the public's confidence in politicians has certainly been decreasing rather than increasing. I'm wondering if you think ethics breaches have something to do with that.
It's most probably a factor, one of the several factors that plays into it. But yes, we've had a significant regular flow of negative reports, and it's probably playing a role.
Are you surprised at all to the degree which that flow is regular?
It's been like that since the act was passed. We're talking about 4 reports a year. That's not great. We have 3,000 people who are governed by the act, and we have four reports a year, which are adverse. So it's not, prima facie, it's not excessive, but any report is too much, so far as the public is concerned.
Based on your experience and the reports that you've conducted during your time in office, do ethics breaches happen because politicians think they're above the rule or above the law, or is it because they're just not aware enough of them or understand them?
I would say the latter. Generally speaking, the latter. I'm quite convinced, although there may have been a situation or two where it appeared that it was a conscious decision to take a chance, basically. We all do that sometimes, not in ethical matters necessarily, but, crossing the street when the light is about to change. And so you make a strategic decision sometimes to proceed with something, even though you might suspect it's not okay. But by and large, ignorance, inability to identify a situation where a conflict of interest will arise. That's the key, essentially. Being able to see one when you see one. Being able to tell one, when you see one.
So is it a matter, I guess what I'm trying to get at is it a matter of not seeing it because you don't understand what the rules are? Or I feel like some people will listen to that question and think, but how do you not just know, right? How do you not just know helping out your friend when you're in a position of power probably isn't a good idea?
Yeah, it depends on the situation. The speed of things, I think, is part of the explanation as well. In some situations, we have, some ministers sign hundreds of contracts each month. It's possible that, in some offices, they use the arm, and it's possible that maybe they'll use the arm not knowing that the person is the minister's friend. Anything is possible. Speed of things is one factor as well. The volume with which cabinet ministers are dealing on a monthly basis, daily basis, is such that it's possible that an error will appear as well.
Do you think that ministers in particular are taking the possibility of these breaches seriously enough?
I think yes, they are, but they fail to do. The recommendation I made in the last report I tabled was to make mandatory training of a few hours upon appointment as minister or parliamentary secretary. I think the office could, within 3 or 4 hours, give an overview which would assist any minister, parliamentary secretary, to have a much better global understanding of what's required under the Conflict of Interest Act, instead of focusing on a single little type of situation. That's what they currently do. They focus on, a gift. I'm being offered something. Is it acceptable? There is this contract involving my husband and so on, but you have to have an overall appreciation for what's required of you under the Conflict of Interest Act, and very few people take the time to take the training we're offering.
So you think it should be mandatory?
I think so.
And have you had any
small investment to prevent a lot of problems, and further erosion of public confidence as well?
Was there a positive reception from the federal government to that recommendation? Have you had any conversations to that effect?
No, I haven't. I have not heard anything except the government leader in the House said that it will be examined. That's all I have.
When it comes to the consequences of breaching the act, for example, your predecessor had highlighted what she would characterize, I remember her characterizing as penalties that were perhaps not stiff enough, that didn't act as a form of deterrence. Nobody resigns, right? There's no big consequence other than that penalty so far. There could be consequences in an election, but so far there really haven't been. Do you think the penalties need to increase, or what do you think will contribute to that idea of deterrence?
I think a better effort to be made for the Prime Minister. The way the Act works, the Prime Minister gets my report. I express the view that the Act has been breached, and the Act is clear. The Prime Minister then has to assess the impact of the situation. It's a condition of employment. Respecting the Act is a condition of employment. So the employer must decide whether something needs to happen by way of punishment. So, and there's been no feedback to me ever about the consequences. So we've all assumed there was no consequence because we haven't heard about any consequence. So I think that's where the key resides, assessing each case, deciding whether Mr. Fergus, whether something needs to be done vis-a-vis Mr. Fergus. If not, saying so, having some accountability loop whereby we find out what's happened to Minister Ng. Maybe something has happened to Minister Ng and we don't even know about it.
But is that a problem that we don't? I mean, again, circling back to my first question, where there has been to a degree an erosion of trust from the public to politicians, there is no real transparency around this. We know what your decision is, for example, and what fine you can levy. But beyond that, there's like resign or not and all this gray area in between that's very opaque.
It's like confidence in the justice system. You do know what the sentence imposed to anybody who's been accused of anything will be. You can always find out what the sentence is. Even if there is an absolute discharge, you still find out about it. So that's the problem here. We don't know what happens. No one tries to find out what happens, unless it's obvious, of course, if the person is demoted or if something obvious happens. But nothing obvious has happened in any of the cases I've dealt with in those 5 years.
And is that frustrating?
No, because I've learned to, my role is to investigate objectively, come to a conclusion, and it's somebody else's role to decide the consequences. I can live with that. But I care about the erosion in public confidence, however, which is a different matter.
Yeah, that's essentially what I meant. I did want to ask you just one final thing, because the Prime Minister was asked about some ethics breaches of his ministers as well as his own by my colleague Omar Sachedina in an interview at the end of last year, and he said that we have a system that has the kind of accountability and transparency that works, and that is clear to reassure Canadians that if someone is taking advantage of the system, either deliberately or by accident, they'll get caught and called out on it. And that's an example of the institutions working. Now, from my perspective, it sucks because you don't want people to be making mistakes. You want people to be able to focus on delivering good things for Canadians. Essentially, what exists right now, the Prime Minister is arguing, is in and of itself enough accountability. Do you think that's true?
I don't agree with the Prime Minister, but I'm not the Prime Minister.
What does it tell you that he thinks that it is?
I don't know. I've tried to think about it. I frankly don't understand what he's trying to say. We may be on different wavelengths, when we talk about these matters. The former commissioner said that Mr. Trudeau had a blind spot for ethical issues, as you might recall.
Do you think that's true?
Could be part of the explanation. Who knows? I don't know.
Do you think that's true?
No, I don't think it's true anymore. It may have been true 6 years ago. I think there's been some significant efforts on the part of the Prime Minister and the ministers as well to put in place what needs to be looked at to avoid problems. So they've done a lot compared to, I think, what it was initially when I became the commissioner. So they do understand the importance of following the rules governing ethics. But they've made errors successively. Several of them have made errors. 14 reports altogether where we blame an MP or a minister for breaching the Act or the code governing the conduct of members of Parliament. So mistakes keep being made in spite of efforts.
Mr. Dion, I will leave it there. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon, sir, and best wishes in your future endeavors.
It was a pleasure as well to you.